My first real job in Hollywood was at the William Morris Agency, where I was an assistant to an agent in the independent film division. I had had a couple menial jobs before that. I hauled audio props back and forth to the DJ booth on the set of Beverly Hills 90210. I read scripts. I worked as a receptionist for a small film production company where there was really no one to receive. But William Morris was where it really began. To get that job, I had to teach myself how to type. I had a friend at a temp agency who told me she could get me work at one of the major agencies if I was just able to pass a typing test where the bar was 50 words per minute. Every day I came to the empty office of the production company and sat at the reception desk and doggedly retyped articles from the New Yorker, timing my progress as I went. Eventually, I felt confident enough in my skills to schedule an appointment at the temp agency and drive to their office on Sunset Boulevard to take the test. I did well enough that they felt they could set me up for temp jobs without embarrassing themselves or me getting fired. And that was good enough for me. I don't think I really could type 50 words per minute, but if they believed I could, I was going to put that shit on my resume too. Ultimately, the temp agency didn't come through with any work. Instead, opportunity found me at a party out in the Palisades where some girls I knew had rented a huge house overlooking the ocean. Los Angeles was a different place back then. College grads could assemble a handful of friends and rent practically a mansion. I was lingering in the hallway there, guzzling beer. I drank like a maniac back then. When one of the hosts introduced me to a young William Morris talent coordinator named Geyer Kaczynski. A talent coordinator was someone who had proven themselves as an assistant, but had not quite graduated to full agent status. They no longer sat, quote unquote, on a desk and answered phones for someone else. Instead, they had their own office and were free to set their own schedule. While they basically serviced the entire talent department, organizing information to help the agents book work for their clients, they could also start to build relationships with actors and actresses and build a career by introducing these prospects to the agency. The talent coordinator might spend a lot of time taking notes in staff meetings, but their real goal was to identify and sign talent. That was how they'd get ahead. Geyer, for instance, would go on to represent Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton, among many others. But first things first, he asked me how fast I could type. When I told him I could type 50 words per minute, he started putting me up for jobs. Back then, William Morris would pay its employees a $275 bonus if they recruited an assistant who stayed at the agency for more than 3 months. I suspect Geyer was helping me strictly for the bonus, but maybe he liked me too. If his job was to spot talent, he at least believed I had enough of the stuff to last 3 months at William Morris. I'm not sure he was right. My first interview at the agency was with the assistant to the head of the motion picture department. Geyer called me up one afternoon and just patched me through to her on the phone. The interview lasted about 5 minutes. I was on hold for most of it, as she jumped off my line to answer other lines and tend to her boss. I don't know what I said, but I didn't pass the test. Geyer called me minutes later and read me her verdict. Too green. I didn't know what that meant, but Geyer was undeterred. Hang in there, he said. I'll be back with something else. I doubted I'd ever hear from him again. I hardly knew him, and I'd already failed the first test. But Geyer proved as good as his word, and a few days later he was back with another opening. I'm telling you, he wanted that $275 bonus. There was a new agent in the independent film division. Geyer had already sent him my resume. He wanted to meet. I'm pretty sure the only reason I ended up getting that job was I had a nice suit. Before lighting out for Hollywood, my dad took me to Paul Stewart in New York City and set me up with a pretty fancy wardrobe. I had a gorgeous gray nail head I wish I hadn't destroyed. But for the interview, I wore the more mundane charcoal number and an Hermes tie. I think I had the job the minute I set foot in the room. Mind you, these suits were cut in the classic English tailored style at a time when everyone in Hollywood was wearing these flowy Armani outfits made from so much fabric you could cut 3 or 4 suits from each ensemble. I looked like a banker. That was apparently what my boss sought out. He was an affable and intelligent guy with a gentle face, spectacles, and an easy smile. He was a francophile and an ex-financier. Unlike a lot of people at William Morris, he was not a psychopath. The only thing that seemed super weird to me as I sat in his office talking about my college experience and my hopes and dreams in the biz was that he occasionally lapsed into French. This seemed unnecessarily pretentious to me, and I was mostly embarrassed for him. I chose, for his sake, to ignore these outbursts altogether. I mean, I had passed out of French 4 years ago by taking a placement test my freshman year of college. I couldn't understand a word he said, anyway. By the time the interview was over, it was clear I had the job. He laughed as he confided that human resources had sent him some real doozies. You can't believe the way these people dress. He patted me on the back and showed me out. I practically skipped down the anonymous halls whose every scuff I would later get to know so well. And as I ducked into the stairwell to bound down to my car, I pulled out my resume, neatly formatted on ivory stock, and reviewed the list of accomplishments that had brought me this far. It did look great. I was an impressive prospect. No wonder Geyer wanted to find me a job. And there, at the bottom of the page, under heading Skills, was the lie that probably should have cost me the shot. It said, fluent in French.